Hi, it's Barney from BBC Good Food. Thank you ever so much for joining us for another Q&A. We've got a very special guest today, so hopefully joining me soon, our contributor, food writer, and author, Rosie Birkett. We're just going to wait for her to join us, and as soon as she's there, let's have a look. So Rosie's going to be joining us now. And as soon as she's there, we're going to greet her and we're going to start our Q&A. It's really good to be getting contributors. Hi, Rosie.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. This is lovely, isn't it? How nice to see you.
It's really nice to be here. I am sorry, I'm just getting used to this whole situation with the technology.
So we are so Rosie. The things Rosie's talking about is we are actually on two screens in our offices because we're live on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube all at once. So yeah, if you have any questions, any nice cooking questions, please send them in. I've got lots that I've already prepared because it's such a pleasure to talk to you. Now, we would normally be in Birmingham, wouldn't we? We'd normally sharing a stage, and I normally have the pleasure of your food. I mean, the food you've cooked for me in Birmingham over the years is phenomenal. I mean, that katsu chicken burger was something else. You've made the most incredible brunch dishes. I mean, I feel a bit gutted that we're not together because selfishly I don't get to eat your food because I get to eat your food about twice a year. But this will do for the moment. This is the new way of working. This is all absolutely fine, and we do get to chat. So we do, the show must go on, and
exactly.
And I've got some lovely questions for you. So firstly, I want to know, because you do the column that you do for us and the recipes you write for us are very ingredient led and are incredibly seasonal.
Yeah.
And your food is very much, I would say. So what should we be eating right now? At the moment, you're in Deal, aren't you? You're in Kent. That's when you're on lockdown. So you've got lots of amazing produce available to you. What's perfect right now?
Well, I mean, what I would say is now is just we're so lucky in June, aren't we, with the seasonal veg? So it's really all about getting on board with those delicious hearty salads. And I'm a huge fan of broad beans.
Yeah.
And that's what my column, which is out at the moment in Good Food, is all about. It's all about broad beans. And I don't know how you feel about broad beans, Barney,
I
but
love
for
them.
me they're real highlight of the summer.
Yeah.
And there's something that I had a lot growing up, because I grew up in Kent and my parents had a vegetable patch.
Oh.
And that was their big hobby. My dad's big hobby was maintaining this vegetable patch. And the broad beans were always, like a big moment in the calendar. It was when the broad beans came through, it was very exciting. He used to do this twitchy shoulder excitement thing that we used him for, and just gathering the broad beans and then cooking with them was always kind of drilled into us that this was a real privilege that we had this access to, healthy, fresh vegetables, and B, the fact that they were so fresh, and that we were picking them ourselves and tasting them, and cooking them that night. It was just a really kind of incredible thing. And I think that love of broad beans has lived through into adulthood, and now I'm a broad bean bore and I love them.
And what dishes do you? And question number one is, you need to double pod them, right? I mean, I've read recipes before where they don't double pod them, and I've always been one for double podding. I mean, I've never tried them that fresh that you don't.
You actually don't have to. And my dad didn't used to. He never had the patience to double pod them. So, and the flavour and a bit more of a kind of meatiness to them. So, and when they're super fresh and young, actually eating them with the skins on is quite nice, because they kind of have, like I said, a kind of bit more substantial. But if you're going for the real kind of like beautiful, vibrant green color and the slightly more tender bean within, then it is good to double pod them. And most of my pretty much all my recipes, I do call for that. I mean, they look incredible. The color that you get from a broad bean, is so it's so vivid, isn't it? And so kind of miraculous and beautiful. But yeah, it's not that much of a hassle really to pod, to double pod them. And a really good trick I learned, because I did a little sort of one-day stage at Lyle's back years ago, and when they had me in, they kind of just put me in the corner with a crate of broad beans that had freshly come in from the farm, and they were like, oh, can you get those out of their pods for us? And it was kind of all day job actually, and because actually initially taking them out of those foamy pods is quite laborious, but I learned this thing, which is when you twist them between the beans. So if you actually, because I used to run my finger down and pop them out like that, but if you actually feel between the beans and twist, then you can kind of pop them out all the way along the pod, and that's a good way to do it. And then it's just a case of blanching them in hot water, for a minute or two, draining them, rinsing them with cooking, and then I always get Jamie to do this, and if you've got kids, get them involved. I say like more hands is always a good thing in the kitchen, and so get them involved in slipping them out. You just need to pierce the scale and pinch them out.
So someone has asked for the beginner cook, what does double podding mean? So broad beans come in a thick green pod, and it's furry. I'm going to ask a question about that later. And then the beans themselves come in this sort of silvery light green skin, which, as Rosie said, if you're lucky enough to have super fresh, you don't need to peel off. But actually, when you buy them from the shops, or when you buy broad beans, or when they're frozen, you kind of do need to pod them. So that's what double podding is. But another question: have you ever cooked them? So I've heard cooking them still in the first pod, and then burning them in the first pod, and that steaming the beans themselves. Have you ever heard of that, or have you ever done anything with the first lot of skin?
I've seen that being done on the barbecue actually.
Yeah, on the barbecue,
yeah, if you throw them on, and then they obviously cook within the pod, and then you can just kind of pop them out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of less control there in terms of how much you're cooking them and the intensity of the heat and stuff like that. But there's definitely one to try on the barbecue. Yeah. I might try that this weekend if we get our barbecue out this weekend.
And so you had a desert island broad bean dish. We could probably stretch to two. You love broad beans. What are your two favourite ways of eating them?
Ooh, so many different ways, aren't there? I think they're really lovely on a kind of this is something on Hackney Road, and it was a kind of labneh dish, so on a really kind of a strained yogurt, thick and creamy, and then she did a sort of chili butter with broad beans, and I've recreated that at home before, because you've got those lovely green broad beans, and then that kind of rich chili butter and the labneh. But one of the things that I did in the column actually that's out at the moment is a take on vignarola, which is a Roman dish that celebrates the kind of spring summer ingredients. So it's a braise of artichokes, broad beans and peas, and you braise oil with some wine, plenty of olive oil, and then my spin on it was to add orzo to kind of and some Jersey royal potatoes. But I love having them with asparagus and Jersey royals, because they're all kind of in season at the same time.
Yeah.
So they're delicious, lovely with fish, with a bit of pan-seared sea trout. Again, maybe a bit of brown butter and some beans with a bit of lemon juice. Great in pasta with ricotta and greens.
Yeah, pappardelle.
Pappardelle, exactly.
So delicious.
Really nice with crab, actually. Crab and pappardelle.
How delicious.
Yeah, different ways of using them, and just in a salad as well. We've been having them loads in kind of crunchy raw carrot salads with a kind of Vietnamese dressing with fish sauce and lime juice and chili, and a bit of sugar and rice vinegar, and have that with like raw carrot, a bit of raw kohlrabi, spring onions, broad beans that have been blanched. And you don't have you can prep them, keep them in the fridge, or even if you've got a glut of them, keep them in the freezer. So
and they are delicious from the fridge as well, as you said, with some ricotta, with feta or something salty. They're absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
But they remind me, to me, they're like asparagus in terms of they're wonderful for the time that they're there, and then once they're gone, and then you have that seasonal anticipation of that round again. And I know you can buy them frozen, and obviously we have to test recipes out of season, but that to me, it's that special time when there's the couple of months that they're there and they're fresh and they're British. So talking of which, can you give me, as I said, because I really kind of I associate you with ingredient-led cooking, which I know sounds ridiculous. All things about. I mean, you to me really showcase ingredients. We give you an ingredient each month, and you make it the star of the show. Things that people might consider to be just a humble veg, and all of a sudden you really bring it to you take it from the chorus line and make it the star of the show. Are there any British in deal where you are there any British ingredients that you find are underutilized, cheap, plentiful, that we should all be eating it more of?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you should mention that, because I actually I've been working a bit with goat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which you can get in the UK, which is we don't really use it that much as of our British cuisine at all. But it has got a really, if you're a meat eater, it has got a really amazing flavour. And it's got a kind of very savoury, very rich, similar to lamb. And it is a byproduct of the goat cheese industry, dairy industry. And what's great is that there's a producer that's actually, using the goat meat that would otherwise kind of go to waste, and is feeding it back into the meat industry. And so if we all cook with a bit more goat, it's cutting down on waste, and it's a bit more sustainable, and it has got an amazing flavor. So I've been cooking quite a lot with goat, actually.
Oh, wow.
And really getting to grips with it. And a slow cooked shoulder of goat is absolutely delicious.
Sounds amazing.
So that's one. And then I think, like, British fish and seafood, really,
Yeah.
we've got some of the best, and we've talked about this before.
We have, yeah,
definitely. Yeah. How much incredible seafood that we have here. And I think what's quite good is that since everything that's happened with people have been reconnecting more. I've certainly heard from my fishmonger that he's been absolutely slammed.
Yeah.
And he's been really busy, and it's been great, been reconnecting with him, and using this fresh off the boat ingredients that he's getting, and some absolutely incredible fish and seafood. I mean, a really kind of affordable one that I love in the summer is sardine, and I think such an underrated, oily fish, absolutely delicious on the barbecue. I'll never forget the time that we went to Lisbon in June, and coincides with this big religious festival, and also with sardine season, and there are just barbecues all over Lisbon, all over the streets, and they barbecue their sardines, and they just eat them on this like delicious bread, with kind of sort of dressings and things like that, and onion, and everywhere you go you can smell grilled sardines, and my husband's absolutely nutty about them. So sardines is a big one. Another one I think we could use more, and this is something that I've only in recent years started doing, is nettles.
Oh yeah.
They're incredibly nutritious. They are delicious, and they're essentially a pest. I mean, I think we've all stung ourselves on nettles, and they're all over the British countryside, aren't they? And
I think they're the most underutilized kind of free UK. There is a thing I must add, that you mustn't eat before you must only eat them before they've flowered, and you mustn't eat them before and if you are going to pick them, then you must get a really good foraging book about them first, because nettles they're fine. I think it's from March. You need to double check. I think it's from March until about May. They're absolutely fine, and then they can be quite tough, and the flowers aren't edible. So not the whole plant is edible, but when they are in season and they're utilised all over Europe, they're amazing. They taste like spinach. They've got so much flavour to them. You can use them exactly the same way that you use spinach. They're free. They're one of the few wild leaves that we instinctively know what they look like, because we're sort of pre-programmed to not get stung. I agree with you more about this, and about goat that you mentioned earlier about supporting the dairy industry. It's a bit like rose veal. Now, rose veal is completely different from European veal or from mistreated veal. It's an offshoot offshoot of the dairy industry, and if you eat dairy, then there's the byproduct, which is the young calves, and by supporting roast veal, like supporting like eating goat, you're supporting that industry, and those things are sustainable. And there's lots of other fish. You mentioned sardines, but there's lots of fish people don't even know about, like dabs and sand sole. You must get lots of those in Deal. I mean, they're as decent as lemon sole. They're just smaller, but they are equally as delicious, aren't they?
Yeah, and slip soles.
Exactly, slip soles, yeah.
Which is something that I've had, you know, the time that I went to the Sportsman in Kent, which is up there with my favourite restaurants, and yeah, very keen for that to reopen. We've only ever been once, and we went for our wedding anniversary actually as a massive special treat. Yeah, I mean, what a great restaurant, and he does a gorgeous slip sole in seaweed butter. And he's amazing at kind of shining a light on specifically Kentish, what he calls the Kentish terroir, because we do have so many amazing ingredients in Kent. A lot of that is, you know, feeding into London as well, I think.
But he makes a really valid point that Kent's only, I mean, it's only across the channel from France. Everyone makes a fuss about Northern French food, but actually Kent is geographically very similar, and you know, has the same growing temperatures and the same a lot of the same produce. Is there one skill that, so you've been in Deal, which is by the seaside, you've been in lockdown like everyone else. Is there one skill that you've really mastered during lockdown, or do you think you'll carry on doing?
Well, actually, talking of goat, I made some samosas using the goat meat that I made. I actually used Monica Goarden, who's an Indian chef. She's amazing. Yeah. I used her recipe samosas, and because I just really fancied them. I can't remember why. I think I was reading something about making them, and I was just like, oh, I've never actually made them. And I assumed that they'd be really difficult, and they weren't at all. The dough was actually really easy to make, and
you made the dough as well. You didn't use phyllo pastry. You made wow.
No, I made the proper dough using her recipe, and yeah, so I did that, and I mastered that, and that's something that wouldn't ordinarily necessarily find the time to do. I've been making an awful lot of pizza. Yeah. And that's just been really fun, because it's kind of, especially before, you know, obviously things are easing a bit now. We're all to get takeaway, and you know, maybe go out for a pizza, a socially distanced pizza in the park or whatever. But definitely been making a lot of sourdough pizza, and that has been so delicious, and playing around with different toppings. And it got almost like an obsession. Every Friday night I'd be like, right, it's pizza night, and it was a kind of thing to look for. I think everyone throughout this whole thing, one of the amazing things, if you love food, is that you've been able to kind of make these moments to really look forward to, and they've really been a highlight of life during this time, because it's kind of been the only thing that we've had, really. And
what's been your secret to making sourdough pizza at home? Do you do the pan method? Do you put it in a hot oven? Do you cook it on a barbecue?
So I've actually got one of the portable wooden pizza ovens. Yeah. It's not wooden. I mean, it's a wood burning pizza oven. But I have done it very successfully in a frying pan before. And the key, if you're doing it in a frying pan, you start the base off in a frying pan, and you turn your grill on, because what you get in a pizza oven is you've got heat from the underneath from the pizza stone, and you've got the heat on top, which has been generated from the fire. So you can recreate those conditions using a really hot, I mean, I use a cast iron skillet, and get that really, really hot, get the base done underneath so it's nice and crispy, and then whack it in into the oven. Okay. Having had the grill on, you can get the grill really hot, then you turn it off, put the oven on, put it in so it's getting the heat from the grill and the oven to finish it off.
That's perfect. And I kind of you say that because when you look at a pizza oven, you said there's flames coming over the top and then it's underneath, so you're getting it from both angles. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that to me it's a massive game changer. And I've tried it with pizza stones, and I've tried cooking it lots of other ways, and every other which way. But when I discovered that method, I was like, that was a eureka moment, and all of a sudden this pizza looked like it'd been shop bought, and it was, as you said, cooked in a hot frying pan, and then under a grill. And that's the method that we use. If you go to bbcgoodfood.com and look up sourdough pizza, that's exactly. I wasn't testing you, but that is exactly the same method that we use.
On the same page.
Exactly.
So one thing that I have also found game changing about, and this is what I've realised over the weeks of doing pizza night on a Friday, with a margarita in hand, I have to say, I've definitely been enjoying quite a lot of margaritas.
Margarita with a margarita.
A margarita and a margarita. I mean, what more could you want? Double marg. One really good thing is semolina flour, because if you dust, you know, if you're using a what are they called? The
peel. It's called
a peel. Yeah, if you're using a pizza peel, if you dust that with semolina flour, or if you can dust your base, if you're using a frying pan with the semolina flour, it gives it that really good extra crunch. If you use plain flour or the 00 flour for dusting, it doesn't have the same texture, and this gives you that really authentic crunch and that really kind of.
And it also acts as like microscopic ball bearings, edible ball bearings, and normal flour absorbs all the moisture, and you've only got 30 seconds before it turns into part of the recipe. But actually semolina, as you said, it kind of creates a layer between, and really helps put the pizza, because it's quite a knack, isn't it, getting the pizza onto the peel and then into the oven. It is to do with like a flick of the wrist. I mean, I've got there now, but you exactly. But getting it first, getting your cooked pizza onto the peel, I think is trickier than getting it off the peel into the oven.
Yeah, you got to get it down. We've got a kind of production line going on now with you know, I will take it out on the peel, flick it into the oven, Jamie will watch it and turn it while I get the other one ready. You have to kind of get into a rhythm, get everyone involved. Pizza's a great one to do with the kids, not that I've got kids, but you know, I think it's a lovely one because it's all about just putting different toppings on and playing around with the flavors. So that's a really, really good one.
Now, you mentioned you grew up with an allotment and you have an allotment yourself, and I keep on coming back to this, but is there I'm doing this quite selfishly actually, because I'm about to build myself, it's been my lockdown project, a small raised bed, and I don't, even though I like to think that I'm a decent cook, I've never grown my own, and it's totally new to me. I have no idea. I've grown a few herbs and I've grown a few tomatoes, but I've never gone down the whole grow your own route. If there was one thing from all your years of helping your dad and having a lot yourself that you say is like absolutely incredible, fresh from the ground, or that everyone should try at least once, pulled from the earth and then cooked, what would it be?
Oh, I mean, I can't just say one.
All right, go for first season. Should we say a couple? What's best in spring? You mentioned broad beans.
Yeah, I really think broad beans are amazing because they're one of the first. You can actually eat them before, you can overwinter some broad beans, so you can put them in before before the spring, and they are one of the first things to come up, and it's such a tangible, you know, you watch them coming. Okay, the black fly is annoying. My broad beans are always covered in black fly. Guys, if you've got any tips, please get in touch with us. You have to pinch out the shoots, but they are, you know, growing broad beans, do it, definitely beans. Another one that's really, really good, because you can also with broad beans use the flowers, and I
like courgettes. Oh no,
yeah.
no,
they're small. You put them in a salad, and they taste like broad beans, and they look like they're just beautiful.
My favourite broad bean recipe of yours, you did one with braised squid for us years ago, which was absolutely gorgeous, and then you did one with slow roasted courgettes, and that, I mean, again, in terms of like bringing humble ingredients to the forefront, making the star of the show. Those are prime examples. I mean, for me, braised squid's delicious. The fact you with it is lovely as well. Sorry, and you what would you say? Oh, we've got a green veg. Is there a root veg that you love?
Oh gosh, I mean the root veg is where you really taste it as well, because you know, there's nothing. I don't. Do you like beetroot? Because I know beetroot's one of the. I don't know about the people that are watching. Like, beetroot's quite divisive. Some people hate it, but it is. I just think it's amazing.
No one
it's
else in my family will eat it.
no, my mum's got this thing. I won't eat beetroot, but it's so good. And it's what's great about beetroot is it's you can eat the whole of it. So you eat the root and then you can eat the leaves as well. And that's like, so it's a completely zero waste. They grow it from seeds. The seeds are really cool. They're kind of like little knobbly seeds. I love planting beetroot seeds. They're really, really like nice seeds to plant. And you can get all different colors, all different varieties. So you can really mix it up with the colors, which is beautiful. And then you can eat the whole thing, the leaves, the root.
Root to fruit, I think is the term. Root to fruit is the
root to fruit.
Yeah.
That is, yeah, Tom Hunt's, I think Tom Hunt coined that phrase. Yeah, and so they're amazing. Radishes is another one, delicious.
And pulled from the ground, crunchy. They are amazing actually. I grew up with some of those. That was amazing. And so one of my questions, another one of my questions was going to be, have you got any tips for food waste? Because I know you're very good, but I think you've answered it there, because usually there's a lot of, if you grow your own or if you buy whole vegetables, not in the packet, there are parts of the vegetables we don't consider to eat, like cauliflower stalks, which again I've eaten in your recipes, like as you mentioned, beetroot leaves, which is wonderful in salads, carrot tops. There are a lot of edible parts of the vegetables we don't use.
This week, because I had a bit of a glut of carrots, not that I'd grown myself, but from the veg box that we get, and they came with their tops on, and you can totally eat the tops. They make a really nice pesto. But what I've been doing this week, because I just kind of really fancied it, I just wanted to have a go, is making carrot fritters. And you can actually use the tops and the carrot to make carrot fritters. So I grated those down. I finally sliced up some radishes, spring onion, a bit of chili, and then I added like caraway seeds and salt, and a bit of sumac, and then gram flour, and a bit of buckwheat flour, an egg, and some oat milk, and made a kind of like loose batter and fried those off, and they were delicious. And that's a great example of using the whole thing together.
That is absolutely wonderful. Listen, I can't believe we're running out of time, Rosie.
What?
And I mean, it's just it's flown past.
Really?
And honestly, the questions I had for you, I've probably gone through maybe not even a quarter of them, because it is lovely to see your enthusiasm, your knowledge of produce. The thing about your food really is even though you're not vegetarian, but most of the recipes you do for us are, whenever we try them, whenever I eat them, I don't even know that that's the deal. It's just absolutely delicious plate of food. And there was a recipe of yours, I mentioned it before, and I'll say it again, and it's a chickpea curry, and then you make a coconut sambal mix, and that, be it vegetarian, vegan, full of meat, that is one of my favourite recipes of all time. And I thank you just for that recipe alone, because it was absolutely delicious. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I do. I know the one you're talking about.
I make that all the time, and that's a big part of my repertoire. Thank you ever so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Barney, and thanks everyone for joining.
So the Good Food Show and Gardener's World would have been live. Rosie would have been under the same roof with Rosie, and would have had Gardener's World alongside with us as well. There was another live chat this evening on Good Food Facebook, on a Good Food Facebook page, with the Gardener's World team, and they'll be talking about weatherproofing your garden. If you want more recipes from Rosie, you can read her column in the Good Food magazine, or search Rosie Birkett under bbcgoodfood.com. We'll be back at 3 p.m. next week with a weekly sourdough session, with a guest from Adam Bush, perhaps from Olive Magazine, and our sourdough session might not be going out on Tuesday, we're not sure, but if you keep your eyes peeled to our social media, you'll find out when our sourdough session is going out. Rosie, thank you again. Hopefully we'll get to chat to you again soon. I'll get to be in the same room as you in the not too distant future.
Oh, that would be so great. Thank you.